Good day, everyone. Our topic is about capitalism and that drive by Byung-Chul Han. What we nowadays call growth is in reality random. Production increase resembles destruction. So we are currently living through a frenzy of production and growth that seems like frenzy of death. Growth in capitalism is actually uncontrolled. This growth conceals a catastrophic trajectory that leads to destruction. Capitalism, much like disease or a cancer, spread without regarding for harm it causes. Sigmund Freud, born in 1856 to 1939, was an Australian neurologist. Freud proposed that life inherently contains a death drive. For Freud, death drive is a biological urge to return to an inanimate state where the aim of all life is death. And looking backwards, inanimate things existed before living ones. It suggests that capitalism may be driven by a similar force. Capitalism, relentless push for profit and expansion mirrors that drive destructive tendencies. In short, growth and destruction become one at the same. Arthur Schnitzler compares humankind to a bacterium. He compares humanity to a bacteria, blindly destroying its host, the planet and the society. Through uncontrolled production and consumption, this alienation leads humankind to engage in action that contribute to its eventual destruction. Next, Bernard Maris, a French economist, and his perspective, he argued that capitalism cunning lies in its ability to channel destructive force into what appears to be growth. However, this growth is ultimately unsustainable and leads to death and destruction. Over time, the death drive inherent in capitalism overwhelm life, leading to societal collapse. In short, the driving force of capitalism is a death drive that serves the purpose of growth. According to Freud, all living organisms possess a desire to return to inanimate state. Capitalism taps into the death drive by promoting endless production and consumption, ignoring the consequence on life and its environment. The death drives for self-preservation and mastery are merely ways to postpone death, but they are ultimately lead to the same end. Life as a path to death.
Hello, my name is Arnel F. Tabarcon, a member of Group 7, which we're gonna tackle about capitalism and death drive. Today we're diving a pretty deep topic, Sigmund Freud's theory of the death drive and how it connects to human aggression, capitalism, and violence. So let's start by understanding what Freud meant by death drive. Freud's death drive, the urge to self destruction. So imagine this. Freud believed that every living being has this eternal urge to self destruct. It sounds a bit dark, right? He called it the death drive. It's basically the instinct that pushes us towards a kind of return to non existence, to stop fighting against the challenges of life. It's like we all have this eternal pull toward ending things. Now, you might thinking, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. But here's the twist. Freud didn't just leave it there. He said, we have something called the life drive, or eros, that help us fight against this urge. Eros is the force that pushes us to live, to create, to survive. Think about it. Have you ever felt really down or ready to give up, but something inside you pushes you to keep going, to make it through? That's Eros fighting against the death drive. Second one is aggression and sadism. Okay, now let's talk about aggression. Freud argued that the death drive doesn't just make us feel like giving up on life. It can also turn into something much darker, which is aggression. And not just regular aggression, but something like sadism, getting pleasure from hurting others. Freud believed that sadistic acts where people hurt others can actually satisfy both death drive and need for power. It's like a twisted way of feeling in control, even though it's destructive. Think about the last time you saw someone really enjoy the power they had over another person, whether in real life or maybe in the movie. That's enjoyment, that control might be linked to narcissistic pleasure Freud's talk about. The third one is capitalism and the fear of death. Now, let's take this deeper. Have you ever wondered why capitalism seems to be driven by constant need for more? More money, more power, more growth. Well, according to a thinker named Maris, capitalism is actually fueled by the same fear of death that drive us as individuals. Maurice argues that capitalism is about constantly accumulating because we're all unconsciously trying to fend off the fear of dying, of losing everything. It's like trying to beat death by constantly having more, doing more, and growing more. Do you ever feel like you're caught in a cycle of wanting more? Whether it's money, success, or just things? Is it possible that deep down, it's because we're trying to protect ourselves from the fear of not being enough or even dying? The fourth, the economy of violence, power, and control. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Freud's ideas about the death drive and aggression can even explain violence in societies. Take ancient blood feuds, for example. These were cycles of revenge. When someone was killed, the group would respond with even more violence, trying to restore their sense of power. Does that sound familiar? Think about how violence, whether in families, communities, or even countries, can spiral out of control when people feel their power is threatened. The need to retain control drives this cycle of violence. Can you think of any situation where violence seems to grow because people were trying to show they were in control? It's kind of like defense against the fear of being weak or vulnerable. The fifth, the link between money and sacrifice. And there's a cool little fact. Did you know that word money actually has ties to sacrifice? In ancient times, money was used to buy animals for sacrifices. It shows us how the desire for power and control has been linked to violence for a really long time. So in a way, money isn't just about buying things. It's also about maintaining power. That's why we see wealth being used to control, to dominate, and sometimes even to destroy. So what all this mean? Freud's death drive theory can help us understand why we sometimes feel destructive, why we crave power, and even how systems like capitalism can keep us stuck in the cycle of growth and accumulation. It's all tied to the fear of death, the fear of losing everything. I want to hear from you. Do you think the fear of death really drive our behavior this much? How do you see the death drive showing up in your own life?
My name is John Tita Langit, and our topic is capitalism and the death drive. Money as sacrificial blood. In ancient times, people offer blood in sacrifice to gain power. Money is like that. It's compared to frozen sacrificial blood, and spending it's like making the power flow. For example, if you spend a lot of money on something, it feels like powerful, like you're controlling what happens. And pinaagi sa money, you can for example mo makabay kag cars, house and lots, and you control your life o the outcomes of your life nga mao na imong ma-gain ana. That's it. And capital as a modern mana. In some cultures, warriors gain called mana. People see wealth as a way to gain power and feel invincible. For example, billionaire, they have control people because of money. Money dagang mabuhat ang money for to secure. For example, billionaire, and mupera sila sa mga governments to makuha sila mga private places and mag-pull sa politics to secure their lives. And dagan pwede sila pumagi sa kwarta, dagan silang mabuhat. And capital as frozen time. Money is also like storing up time. The more money you have, the more time and freedom you feel you can buy. For example, rich people can pay others to do tasks for them and to save their own time. For example, mga businessman, nagpasweldo sila og mga tao para magbuhat sa mga unsay sa company nila. And nana mao na example for my understanding. And other term is like mga ilang pangsuhulan ra mga tao para magbuhat ana. For example, naipasugo ana, mo na ilay pasugo, magbayad na sila para dili sila magkalas-kalas sa ilang oras. And that's it. And there are a story of a man named Ashlyman. A man sells his shadow to devil, which symbolize life, to get an endless money. The story shows how chasing infinite wealth can make people lose important parts of life. And it's about how money and wealth make people feel powerful, but can also come with sacrifice. And next is fear of death and undead life. Capitalism pushes people to focus only on working, surviving, and being efficient like robots. This creates a life that looks also but feels empty without real joy or meaning. For example, someone working in endless hours at a job, ignoring their health and happiness just to make money, becomes like a zombie focus only on survival. There are some people na nag-work lang, then nag-focus lang sila sa ilang kinabuhi para lang ma-stable, and wala na sila nakabantay sa for example mga tao nga pili kay dato naningkamot og trabaho para lang ma-survive, pero wala na sila bali nilang overtime, and hindi na sila makamind na wala na sila joy, wala na sila mga nila, na wala na sila nag-focus sa ilang health. And that's it. And wala na sila nag-mind nga kulong na kay sila sa trabaho. And that's it.
Dim lighting, a minimalist stage with a single desk and a chair. A man sits at a desk with books and papers scattered around him. A spotlight illuminates the scene. Narrator, calm and reflective. In our ceaseless pursuit of life, capitalism demands not just our labor, but our very essence, our desires, dreams, and ever mortality. Byung-Chul Han, a critical thinker of our time, explores this paradox. He reveals how capitalism represses life by nega- negating, negating death, turning us into mechanical beings chasing an endless cycle of production and consumption. Immortality is promised through wealth, fame, and technology. Yet this promise comes at cost, the loss of what it means to truly live. Life without death becomes sterile, detached, and ultimately lifeless. A shadowy figure appears center stage, representing Jean Baudrillard. He speaks directly to the audience. Baudrillard, in a system where life must be endlessly capitalized, the death drive becomes the only act of rebellion. Risking death shatters the illusion of immortality. It confronts capitalism with the one thing it cannot suppress, the symbolic exchange with death. Baudrillard's symbol of death challenges this system. But what of those who weaponize death for attention, like the suicide bomber? Byung-Chul Han argue their act is no rebellion. It mirrors the narcissism and brutality of capitalism itself, a finite, violent self-production, and society obsessed with spectacle. To escape this deathless trap, Han insists we must reconnect life and death. Death must no longer be repressed but embraced as part of life, a process of transformation, intensity, and even love. A dimly lit rooms appear on stage with a figure representing George Batal. He speaks with fervor. Death is not the end. It is the high of life. It is an extravagance and excess that gives life its intensity. Eroticism, the union of life and death, tears down the walls of individualism. It is an adventure of continuity, a surrender of self of other. For Batel, death and eroticism defeat a capitalist order that resists the commodification of life, which reduces love to mere consumption and the self of a tool of production. The stage transforms into sterile corporate office. Workers move mechanically, surrounded by screens displaying advertisements and dollar signs. Capitalism, like Plato's utopia, dreams of a world without death, a world where graves are hiding, and that are swiftly disposed of, but a life that denies death suffocates in its own ways. A true revolution begins not with violence but with a shift in consciousness. It acknowledge that life is only life with and dialogue with death. To live fully, we must embrace loss, change, and the rapture of the present moment. Only then can escape the suffocating grasp of capitalism and rediscover the intensity of existence. The stage goes dark, a heartbeat sound echoes as the curtain falls.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Ray Singgit, and our topic is about capitalism of death drive. Capitalism death drive. Nowadays, we call it growth. This in reality random cancerous proliferation. Humankind's self-alienation have reached a point where it can increase imitation. According to Byung-Chul Han, the German-Korean philosopher, discussed the concept of capitalism of death drive or dead labor. Individuals exploit themselves, blurring lines between work and leisure, leading into a burnout execution. Capitalism of death drive is a form of perspective history of humanity. It's like a deadly disease. So, we don't
know or when it comes in our lives. The capitalism of death drive is about we, the humankind, facing the disease without a cure. At this point, death enters the frame. Capitalism resists on a negation of death. Death kay it is about our daily lives that we face many struggles or many problems so that we can't um, already face our problems truly in that path because there is some reasons or circumstances. Death is what accounts for the completion of production of growth. Now those who are have lot of money acquired to divine power to kill. So kasagaran yun there are some people nga kana uh, kung kinsa gyud ang may makaya lang gyud kay sila lang gyud ang makaku-answer. Um, makabuhat kung unsa ilang gusto nga mabuhat gyud. We, the humankind, is like a slave of death because we don't know what is coming and what will happen to us. Death is like an infectious disease. So, capitalism death drive is like what we are now. We are facing many struggles in life. We cannot tell that we are not or we don't have a problem because we are humankind and we have many problems that face every day. Unleashing pursuit of efficiency, productivity, and profit maximization. Human existence becomes a marketable good, reducing life economic utility. Life is just capitalism death drive is part of our daily lives. Like we are something like um, cancer that we don't know why or when it comes into our body. So lastly, to affirm life means also to affirm death. Life that negates death negates itself. Only a form of life returns into death. To life will liberate as form the paradox of undead life. Thank you, sir, and good afternoon.
So, hi, I am Giovanni Tano from GH section BN group 7. So, I will be giving the summary of the capitalism and the death drive. So, capitalism and the death drive is a philosophical exploration of the psychological and social consequences of contemporary capitalism. So in this work, it discusses how modern capitalism, which is increasingly focused on self-optimization, productivity, and personal success, is not just an economic system but also a cultural force that deeply affects human behavior, identity, and social relationship. So its central argument is that capitalism has shifted from the traditional model of external expression to a more insidious form of internalized pressure. So in the past, the power was exercised through hierarchical structures, authority, and discipline. But today, it operates through self-exploitation, where individuals internalize the drive for achievement, constantly pushing themselves towards greater productivity and success. So this creates a society where people are not only compelled to work but to work harder but also to constantly improve and perfect themselves. So it introduces the concept of the death drive, arguing that capitalism leads to a kind of self-destructive behavior. So rather than providing individual with freedom, it traps them with cycles of overwork, self-criticism, and exhaustion. So this relentless pursuit of more, whether in terms of success, work, or personal development that leads to burnout, alienation, and even a desire for annihilation, which associates with that drive. So ultimately, it suggests that this form of capitalism, which is emphasis on constant self-optimization, has profound effects on individuals' mental health and well-being. So it fosters a sense of alienation, where the individual is both the worker and the task maker, driven by an internalized system of productivity and performance. So it calls for a reconsideration of this mode of existence and urge a return to a more reflective, less self-exploitation, and the way of life. So that's all for our report. Thank you.